Hello everyone and welcome back to another video on the channel. Today we are going to be wrapping up my 13 Days of Halloween series with two wonderful reviews for you guys. I'm going to be reviewing Scream 3 and Scream 4. I'm going to have both of these uploaded. Today is Halloween, so happy Halloween everybody. This is going to be the end of my Halloween series. I reviewed the original Scream, I think 2 years ago on my channel. I reviewed Scream 2 last year. And so we're going to wrap up the series with both of these before the new Scream comes out later in January. So here are my thoughts on Scream 3. This is going to be my review for Scream 3, and just as a little, refresher, if you guys have not seen my thoughts on the other two, I have an awkward kind of opinion about the Scream movies. Honestly, my most controversial movie opinion of all time, of all movies that I've ever seen, the most pushback I've ever gotten was the fact that I absolutely despise the ending of the first Scream movie. And I know I'm the only person on the planet, and before you click off this video, absolutely hating me for that, I think Scream is a brilliant movie. I think all the way up until, Stu and Billy start stabbing each other, ever since that exact moment, I stopped liking the ending of that movie, and honestly it just drags on and I absolutely hate it, but that is all besides the point. If you want to see my thoughts on that, you can go watch that review. But watching Scream 2, I was very hesitant to watch it because the fact that I hated the ending of Scream 1 and the fact that I hated also the very, very, very ending of Nightmare on Elm Street, I just thought Wes Craven could not for the life of him end a movie well. But then I watched, a couple other his movies and they work out a lot better than that one. So I finally watched Scream 2, and I loved Scream 2. I honestly think it's so much better than the original one, which I know, crazy. I know most people think that Scream 1 is brilliant, but now I'm finally watching Scream 3 and 4. And so I always heard that Scream 3 was kind of the worst of the bunch, or maybe Scream 4 was the worst of the bunch. I knew that these two were definitely lower quality than the first two, and I definitely will agree with that. I don't think this movie is even nearly as good as the first one. Even the ending of the first one, as much as I hate the ending of the first one, I thought the ending of this one was much worse, but I'll get into that in a moment here. But I'll be honest, I enjoyed Scream 3 a lot more than I thought I was going to, and I think overall as a movie, it's perfectly fine. I don't think it's a great movie by any means. I think it's maybe just barely a good movie, mainly because it was just very entertaining. I enjoy these characters. I love Dewey. I love Gale Weathers. I love Sidney Prescott. I love these characters so much, and the fact that this movie was so absurdly meta and it took place in Los Angeles, it kind of broke the form of the other two movies, and it kind of had a grander scale, and they were on sets in Hollywood, and it had some throwback to the first movie, and they had all these other actors playing them in these stab movies that they were in production of, and I thought all that meta stuff was very fun. I thought the other actress Gale Weathers in this movie, I honestly loved her character. I thought the Gale Weathers and Gale Weathers dynamic was very, very entertaining in this movie, and I think that's definitely the highest praise that I can give this film, is the fact that the meta aspects of it is honestly some of my favorites in these series, besides of course the don't look behind you or look behind you scene with Randy in the first one. I think that is brilliant, or every time they talk about the rules of horror movies, I always think that is very funny. But this movie just took the meta-ness to another level, and I really did enjoy that. But in terms of the horror aspect of it, it really doesn't have any. The scenes of suspense in this one are much lower, and the stakes are not nearly as high as the second one. I think that's what I love about the second Scream movies. The stakes feel so much higher because it truly feels like anything could happen in that movie, because they killed off Dewey in that movie, or at least you thought they killed off Dewey, and they actually did kill off Randy in that movie. So that movie had some guts, and this movie is saying oh, it's the third one in a trilogy, so all bets are off in this one. It didn't feel like that. They're saying that that's how it was in the meta commentary. Maybe it's the fact that in hindsight, I know there's a Scream 4 and 5, and I know that Gale Weathers survives. I know that Dewey and Sidney survive, and so maybe that has something to do with it, but I honestly didn't feel any stakes in this movie being more grand and more all bets are off than the first two. And of course, when you have a Scream movie, you have the opening scene, and honestly, I'm struggling to remember. Oh, that's right, the opening scene was with, what's his face, Cotton Weary, and he was killed at the beginning of this movie. I think that was supposed to set the stakes of oh, anybody can die in this one, but honestly, Cotton Weary has never been a character that was really in the forefront, besides a little bit in the second one. He had a pretty substantial role in that one, but even still, he was not one of the main three characters, so it's not I really had an attachment to his character. And so when he died at the beginning of this one, I honestly wasn't too surprised, and I didn't really feel that impending doom for Sidney's character, because oh, they killed Cotton Weary, all the other characters are in so much danger. Honestly, the opening scene was just kind of the fact that his wife or girlfriend's character was just walking around the house with her feet still wet after getting the shower, she had a towel wrapped around her. Do people just walk out of the shower just dripping wet and having their feet just soaked with water and walk around the house. Like, who does that? It just really idiotic things like that were sprinkled throughout this entire movie, and it's not like it was in a meta aspect of it and there's like purposely doing that. It was just honestly genuinely dumb, and the opening scene of this movie really did nothing for me. And so I think it's still probably better than the, actually no, even think the opening scene of the fourth Scream is better than this one. Honestly, I thought the opening scene was just kind of underwhelming. It was very quick. It just didn't have any punch to it like the second one had, or the first one especially. The opening scene of the first one, it's one of my favorite scenes in movies, like, period. I love the opening scene of the first Scream, which is also part of the reason why I hate the ending of the first Scream. But again, that's my other review. Go watch that one. So before I go off on a rant with the ending of the first one, I just thought that this movie kind of opened a little weak, and the ending was definitely the weakest part of this movie, because I did enjoy the fact, all these different cast members were in the house, at the director's little party thing, and they were all being like knocked out one at a time. And I think one great idea in this movie was the fact that the killer got his hands on one of the scripts from Stab 3, and they printed off a bunch of different versions of the scripts because different people die, and they didn't want, those secrets to be leaked out to the public. And that's something that they do in real life. They do that with the Marvel movies all the time. And so I love that idea. And this killer has one of the scripts, and they're killing off people in order of one of these scripts. They just don't know which one it is. So it still has that stakes of, we don't know who's going to die next. But they didn't utilize that as much. They used it a little bit at the beginning once, Gale figured out that that's the order of the killings. Like, once she figured that out, the movie stopped going for that idea. And I thought that was very disappointing. But there's some meta things in the aspect of, like, the ending of this movie with the house that I thought was interesting. But it's the reveal of this movie that I really do hate, because I like Billy and Stu as the killers. I just thought they were really dumb at the end of that movie, and that's why I didn't like that ending of this one. This one, the killer just doesn't make sense. It's only one killer. It's the director guy, and apparently he's like Sidney's brother, and it's like it's like the Palpatine Rey thing. Like, why make them related? There's no reason to retcon things and say, oh, she had, like, the mom had a secret affair in, like, Los Angeles, and you're adding all this lore and backstory behind it that wasn't relevant to any of the other two movies, and they're just kind of like adding this extra baggage to the characters that wasn't present in the first two. And it's just, I hate when sequels do that. The second movie had a reason to exist. I think it did, deal with what does Sidney Prescott do after the events of that movie? How does she deal with that trauma? How did she go on with another relationship after the ending of the first Scream? I thought that was one of the best parts of the second movie, with, her boyfriend and her still not trusting him because of what happened with Billy in the first one. So I love that continuation of her character in that one. In this movie, the movie doesn't have a reason to exist other than, being meta about there being a third movie and to make a trilogy. That was the only reason. And all this lore with the brother, I just thought was just like, it was just absurdly just pointless. I really did not like the fact that this guy was a killer, and the fact that they were related, it was just dumb. But even more so than that, it was only one killer. So some of the kills in this movie itself just flat out do not make sense, because when they're on the prop set and Sidney's running away from Ghostface and somebody's at the door moving the door, and then I think something else happens behind her, like something breaks through the window, or something happens behind her where, like, oh, the Ghostface was behind her the entire time. So it's like, that has to be two people. That person cannot be in two places at the same time. It just doesn't make sense. It's just like, it stopped working immediately once that happened. And like, once the reveal showed that there's only one killer, I was like, how? Because even the killer, like the guy, I don't even remember the guy's name, but the Sidney's brother, the killer in this movie, he was like dead in a coffin at one point, and like, sure, that makes you think, oh, it wasn't him because obviously he's dead, but like, he was also laying in the coffin, and then what's her face, who discovered him in the coffin, died like immediately after. And so like, even that doesn't make sense, because he was in the coffin, right? Did he leave the coffin? Like, how fast did he leave the coffin and put on the Ghostface outfit before he killed what's her face? Like, it just made no sense. So I think this movie really fails at the ending. It does not stick to the landing at all. I think this movie really does just end in a very poor note. It has that, type of thing where, you have the villain character explaining their entire plan when they could just be killing the hero. Like, The Incredibles called this out in, I think, 2004, so I guess maybe they missed the boat. When did Incredibles come out? Yeah, Incredibles came out in 2004. I guarantee you that scene in Incredibles where Syndrome is saying, like, oh, the villain always has a terrible monologue instead of killing the villains, that was a direct response to Scream 1 and to Scream 2 and to Scream 3, because that happens in all three of those movies. Some better than others, but this one was just like, I just didn't care by the ending of this movie. And quite frankly, I'm kind of forgetting a lot of this movie. I think it's pretty forgettable. The more I talk about it, the more I kind of don't like this movie, but I found it entertaining in the moment of watching it. I think the haircuts are laughably bad. Like, that's one thing that's besides the point, but like, I'm not gonna really remember this movie as much as I will all the three other ones. I definitely like Scream 4 more than this one. This one is definitely the weakest of the bunch. I don't think it's a terrible movie. It's fun to watch when you're watching the whole series, as a rewatch for Halloween. I think I did enjoy the comedy of this movie very much, but overall I just didn't care about the story in this one. It didn't have a reason to exist other than the meta aspects of it. So that is my review for Scream 3. Definitely comment down below what your thoughts are on this film, as well as the fourth one, which I'll be uploading that review just in a couple hours here. So thanks guys for watching this video. Subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed this review, and thanks everyone for watching this video and all my 13 days of Halloween series that I've been doing. I just reviewed also Last Night in Soho, so definitely check out that video as well. Thanks guys for watching, and I hope to see you all in my next one.